Hello class and welcome to week 10 lab 2 assignment video. As always, I'm walking through this video on a high level overview. You still want to turn to your e-textbook and review each one of the steps for the lab. For Lab 2, we're going to be working with the Extend Your Knowledge Lab, working with data validation rules. We're going to be turning to page EX 609 to EX 611. We're completing steps 1 through 10. We're going to need the student data files for this assignment, so we're going to need Lab 9-1, Kids Camps Registration. As a reminder, you'll locate that by clicking on the Doc Sharing tab at the top of our class, then select the Student Data Files link. As you scroll down, you'll locate the 9-1 Kids Camp Registration Excel file. You need to download, save, and then open this file in order to complete the Week 10 Lab 2 assignment. Once you open up that Excel assignment, it will look like this. Don't forget, we're also going to turn to our e-textbook here, and we are turning to page 609. We're working on the Extend Your Knowledge Lab, working with data validation rules. We've already downloaded the data files, and now for the instructions. We're asked to create data validation rules in Excel that calculates registration fees for a kids camp, which is a summer camp group that runs 3 specialty camps for 2 weeks each summer. You can continue reading that instructions for the scenario, and then we're going to look at the steps. So we're going to start by opening our Excel workbook, and in step 2. In cell C5 on the worksheet, we're going to enter a data validation rule that allows users so they can enter any value. And then we're going to use the following information directly from our e-textbook that will prompt us in what we need. Let's look at what we need to do for that. So we need to begin by selecting cell C5. And in order to locate the data validation tool, on our tabs in Excel, you'll select the Data tab. We know that we have panels for Get External Data, Connections, Sort and Filter, and Data Tools. In the Data Tools panel, we'll click on Data Validation, pull down arrow, and select Data Validation. Here we now have some options for setting input message and an error alert. So per our actual textbook instructions, we are going to do an input message, and the title that is designated is camper name. This prompts the user of our Excel spreadsheet to complete things properly and come up with the right results. And please enter the camper's full name. So that's our title and our input message, and now we need an error alert title. So I'll select the error alert tab. So I do want to show an error alert if the data is not valid, if it's not correct. And the title that I want is to alert the user to enter a camper name. I mean, ultimately, we don't want a camper, a child, a student entering our camp if we never even put their name in. And the error message, we're just going to say, whoops, I'm sorry, I have these reversed. The title is input error, and the error message is going to prompt them to enter camper name. And for error style, per our textbook directions, I need to select stop. I'll say OK. And that's how you'll use data validation, again located on the Data tab. So looking at our assignment directions again, turning to the next page, I now need to be working in cell C6. And I'm going to enter a data validation rule that requires the user to select from a list. And I want to allow the users to select data from a list of camps, which is in the range of B14 15 and 16. So I have the colon in between the two, which lets me know that that means it's the range of B14 through B16. We're not going to allow the user to leave cell C6 blank, and we'll use the following data validation. We have an input message title, an input message, an error alert title, an error message, and an error stop. So let's go back into Excel and do that now. And we're looking at cell C6. We'll select the Data tab, and on the Data Validation drop-down arrow, we'll select Data Validation. And for our settings, per the assignment direction, I'm selecting List. I'm ignoring blank because ignore blank means that the user can ignore it. They don't have to fill it out. By checking that means they're allowed to ignore it if it's not completed. By unchecking it, they can't continue on or do anything until it is actually completed. The source I'm going to set, again, is just as we outlined in our textbook. This is just because I used absolute reference, which, as you remember from a previous lab, is those dollar signs. But really what I can just do is the source is B14 colon, and I think it was to B16 per the assignment directions. So you'll type that in and then select for the input message. We're going to show the input message and make sure that's checked. Per our e-textbook, we need a title of which camp, and we need an input message, which is outlined in our e-textbook, where we need to now type in, tap or click the arrow to the right to select the desired camp. Now you'll notice I've already completed this, so in the sake of saving time, but I'm walking you through it. So you can stop, play, pause, fast forward this video as needed, so now you can make sure you have this information included. When I select the error tab, again, per the textbook, I want to make sure I have my style set to stop. The e-textbook has us name this an invalid camp for a title, and the error message that we need to type in here is select Fine Arts Camp, the Sports Camp, or Survival Camp from the list. So you'll need to take a moment and type this data in and make sure the style is stop. And then you'll say OK. Now moving along in our e-textbook as we go on to step number 4, we're looking at cell C7, another data validation rule where we want the users to select a valid entry from a list of extra services, which we are having to see included in cells B20 through B22. Notice the colon between the two, which is really saying B20, B21, and B22. So it's B20 through B22. There are optional services that you can allow the users to leave the cell for C7 blank. For the input message, use an appropriate title and display text that prompts or reminds the users to enter the first extra service the customer needs. What does that mean? That means it's up to you. I'll show you the example. Choose a style for the error alert, considering that if the users enter the service, they have to select one of the 3 from the list. Set an error alert title, create an error message that instructs the user to select from a list. So let's see what that looks like. C7, back into Excel. When I select cell C7, on my Data tab, Data Validation, and for my settings here, I've selected List, and my cell range was B20 through B22. That is the early drop-off. Was that right? Let me check that. Oh yes, it is B20 to B22. So remember what I reviewed before. I can simply just type in B20, B22. Note I have a colon, not a semicolon, a colon in between B20 and B22. I have ignore blank, and for my input message, I have a title select extra services if needed. Remember, this was optional. The input message, tap or click arrow to the right to select any needed extra service. And so they might need lunch, they might need a late pickup, etc. And for the error alert, I changed the style from stop to information, which we see displayed here with the information icon. The title, input error, and you don't have to have this message. You can type in your own error message that alerts that you need to consider selecting from the extra services. And okay. As we go on into our step 5 of our assignment, now we're going to do a custom formula. And we're going to be working in cell C8. So we need a data validation rule that uses the custom formula. And so here's the formula. I'll just copy that formula. And as we copy that formula, which my copy button is all messed up here with my record feature on, we're going to use that as the validation criteria to verify the value entered in C8 is not the same value that's in C7 or in C9. So we want to make sure that C8 does not have the same value as C7 or C9. Here, again, up to your discretion. You need an input message with a title, with a display text to remind users to enter a second service. Choose an error alert style that prompts the users to enter that second service. You must enter one of the 3 services and enter an appropriate alert title and message. Well, let's look at that. Cell C8. So in cell C8 here, I will go to the Data tab, Data Validation, and in my Data Validation for setting, at the very bottom of that I want to select Custom, and here is my formula. I just selected that formula as we saw outlined in our e-textbook, so that we want to make sure that cell C8 value is not the same as in cell C7 or C9. So we're looking to compare that C8 is not the same as C7 and C8 is not the same value as C9. For the input message, I'm looking to enter in a title, and this is where the textbook let you enter in your title to prompt, which you can see displayed right here, and to add an input message, which I just entered in this input message. You can modify this and just type in your own input message. The error alert, you can select the style. I selected stop here. I gave it a title of input error and the error message, prompting the user that they need to select a second service, and a second service that's not already selected. And okay. And as we go back into our assignment, you'll see with step number 6, we're doing the same thing for cell C9. In the sense, we want to make sure that this formula is going to verify the value in C9 is not the same as C7 and it's not the same as C8. So we're following this same formula concept here, only instead of C8 here, we're looking for this to be C9. And instead of this being C9 here, we're just looking to change these values and flip these around. Well, let's look at that now. Let's look at cell C9. And so in C9, Data tab and Data Validation. For my settings, again, I went all the way to the bottom and selected Custom. And all I did is, as I outlined, I just changed this. Was before C8. Now I changed that to C9, so it's not the same as C7. And I switched these two around because this was C8 and this was C9, so I want to make sure C9 is not the same as C8. Input message, you can select a title and prompt the user who's using your worksheet and enter in your own message. Your message does not have to read this title or this input message. Error alert. You'll need to enter a style from the pull-down arrow, and you can select your own style as long as you have a style. Give a title and a prompt that a third extra service must not already be selected. And in other words, we wouldn't want lunch and lunch twice. We wouldn't want early drop-off, lunch, and early drop-off. So that's the reason of making this custom with this formula. And we'll say, okay. And as we move on, and we're rolling through, and we're on step number 7. So in cell C10, we're going to enter again a data validation rule, but hold on with this one. This is going to instruct the users to enter either yes if they're paying when they register, or they're going to enter no if they're not. Now, we're going to need to do a little something here quick. So we want to make sure that cell C10 is not blank, or that we don't allow the users to leave that blank. And we want to use payment as the input message title. So the input message title will be payment. We'll enter in an input message that the purpose is to remind the users to enter yes if paying and no if not. We'll select a style for the error alert, and we'll use invalid entry will be the error alert title. And we'll select an error message that instructs the users to enter yes or no. What does all this mean? Well, you want to go through this in detail, but let's look at that now in cell C10. So in cell C10, you'll see I have this little drop-down arrow here for yes or no. You're going to need to scroll down in your spreadsheet, and in my example, I just put it down here on row B40 and B41. All I did was type in yes, and then I typed in no. So take a moment now and scroll down in your worksheet. And you can put it in anywhere you want. You can put it in 50 or 60, or you can follow my lead and put it in 40 and 41. Either way. But pause now and go down to cell in column B, down to one of the lower cells, and type yes in, for example, B40, and type no in B41. Now that sets the stage for us, giving us this option. Now let's look at the data validation. Select the Data tab, Data Validation drop-down arrow, and for my settings, I'm selecting List is my option because my list is yes or no. For my source, I simply am selecting this source range. So watch what I can do as another example here. For source, I can simply just, with my mouse, select cell B40 and B41, and it will put it right in there for me as you see displayed. I can ignore if blank. I want this to be unchecked because I'm going to make this mandatory. So I do not want them to just simply ignore it if it's blank. Input message. Per the e-textbook directions, the title is payment. And the input message, you need to put a prompt in there as the e-textbook outlined. Enter yes if they're paying at the time of registration and no if they're not. Remember, we need an error alert. You need the alert style. Invalid entry was the title per the e-textbook assignment directions with an error message prompt that you need to put in. You must enter yes or no for payment information. Then select OK. As we continue on in our e-textbook here, we're looking at step number 8 and 9 are really the last, is that the last 2 steps? 8? And then 10 is save your workbook. Well, we know to saved, upload it to Dropbox. So the last 2 steps is step 8 and step 9. In step 8, test the data validation rules by entering the following values in the specified cells. If an error message appears, tap or click the retry button or the cancel button and then enter the valid data. So you'll want to go through and test this as I will. And number 9, you're going to want to enter in cell E20 registered by and have your name. So in cell E20, you'll want to make sure here you add your name. Then of course you'll save, and that's a simple go to the File tab, Save As, give it a file name, and then upload it to Dropbox, and be very careful that you upload it to the Dropbox for Week 10 Lab 2. So Week 10 Lab 2, remember this is just a high-level overview of looking at the data validation tool that is located on the ribbon in the Data tab. I look forward to seeing your Week 10 Lab 2 assignments.